fear is not a sin. It is an emotion that God allowed us to have, and it's actually linked to a survival mechanism, a survival of, there's a scripture in Proverbs that says, a prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. That's saying, hey, pay attention to your fear. And it's literally a biological thing. Our bodies are primed, even at our lower brain, to respond to fear. We call it fight and flight.
Good day, friends. Jonathan Daugherty here with another episode of the PSR podcast, which is a listener-supported outreach of Be Broken Ministries. In today's episode, I sit down with the incredible Karla Downing to tackle one of the most challenging topics in marriage, recovering from sexual betrayal. Karla breaks down how fear and anxiety affect both partners after betrayal, explaining the push and pull patterns of hyper and hypo-reactivity that can make healing so difficult. She offers some practical, compassionate steps for couples to identify and manage their fears, rebuild trust, and communicate more openly. We also explore how leaning on Christ together can serve as a steady anchor throughout the healing journey. To learn more about Karla and her resources, visit changemyrelationship.com. And Karla also provided us with a handout for today's podcast, and you can access it at bebroken.org/anxiety handout. For additional resources, you can visit our website at bebroken.org or check out all the links that we're going to put in today's show notes. And as always, friends, I want to encourage you to rate and review the podcast after listening to help others find it, especially on Spotify and Apple. Now, let's dig into today's outstanding conversation with Karla. Well, all right, we have back with us Karla Downing. So, Karla, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me again. You're so generous.
Yeah, well, you're. I think I've said this to you before, but you're one of my favorite guests because you don't, how sometimes people write books and they talk about having like a certain thickness to the book because then you can see it on a shelf and all this kind of stuff, which means maybe 60% of the book is just fluff. It's not really the content. I love that you're a no fluff kind of person. I like to bring you on because you're not only going to hit a topic with clarity, but you're also going to give solutions, something that is actually practical for people to do. And I think that's going to be even more important in the conversation that we're having today, because we're going to talk about couples that have gone through sexual betrayal in the relationship, and what does it look like to face the fears after betrayal has happened when they're seeking to try to restore and repair what's happened in the marriage. So can you talk a little bit first about maybe how common this is in couples, and that it's okay to talk about these types of fears that might happen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is common in any relationship because we all have a dynamic where all of us have a certain amount of fear, or even we can call it anxiety, that we carry into a relationship. And anytime it gets heated, or there's anxiety, or there's stress, or especially if there's a crisis or there's a problem, we're going to react based on the anxiety and the fear that we have. But people often forget that. They forget that they are reacting from that, and they forget especially that their partner is reacting from that. So this causes all kinds of like exacerbated arguments and conflict and prevents resolution. But when you're talking about betrayal, oh my gosh, this is amplified 1,000 times. But I think what wives forget when they're working, when they're angry and they're hurt and they're struggling with their fear after betrayal, and quite frankly, their shock, they forget that their husband is also going through that. So my desire today is to help both the husband and the wife to understand what's going on within themselves and within their spouse, and how they can recognize that to make this process safer for both and more productive.
That's really good. So let's talk first about fear just as an emotion, because I think even some Christians can think about this term and automatically just think that feeling fear is a sin or it's wrong. Can you just talk about the emotion of fear and why it's okay to actually just even have that emotion.
Yeah, and oh, that just is one a huge frustration for me with this topic is that, and you hear pastors say it in sermons, and I don't think they recognize the gravity of what they're saying and the implication. So, fear is not a sin; it is a an emotion that God allowed us to have, and it's actually linked to a survival mechanism, a survival of, there's a scripture in Proverbs that says, "A prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it." That's saying, hey, pay attention to your fear. And it's literally a biological thing. Our bodies are primed, even at our lower brain, to respond to fear. We call it fight and flight. It is something that happens without our conscious higher brain awareness. You're walking down the street and you jump and you say, what's going on? Your lower brain made you jump without your higher brain even knowing it, because your lower brain sensed something that told it could be danger. Wake them up, pay attention, right? And it is super important. So we have to recognize that fear, that's at the lower thing. And a lot of our reactivity that we're going to talk about today is going to happen at the lower brain for couples, because it's going to be their triggers, it's going to be their memories, it's going to be the fight and flight that they're in from, or maybe even the freeze, which is the shutdown that they're in because of this heightened crisis. And we're going to have to recognize that we've got to deal with it. We got to be aware of it, and we got to take it into consideration. I love this scripture. Psalms 56:3 says, David said, when I am afraid,
Yeah.
I will trust in you. Not if I am afraid, or God, please forgive me for being afraid, which plenty of the Psalms was David's confession of sin. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said, when, like, I'm going to be afraid, God. And David was running for his life from Saul. And he was like, God, help me trust you and turn this over to you. But I'm scared. And that's okay, because it's survival.
Yeah, and that's good. It's like a warning system, right? It's like a built-in warning system that's so good. And now you described that there is a pattern of hypo-reactivity and hyper-reactivity in the spouses when something threatening comes up. Can you talk about how this happens and what it looks like?
So it's highly simplified. I mean, other people break it down into, 5 different response styles of responding to anxiety. Some you could factor in some adaptive styles and stuff too, but I'm going to make it very simple for purpose of this discussion that we're doing, just in a, not a super long podcast. So we have underreacting, overreacting. So we've got underreacting includes distancing yourself from your partner, shutting down, becoming dependent or incompetent, avoiding feelings by engaging in activities like addiction. That's one of the things that is a temptation, in an activity like working all the time, or going and exercising, or watching TV, or withdrawing to other people. And then there's overreacting. And this is the person that is saying too much, pushing too hard, trying to control, hovering. Myself, I do it. I call it, my jokingly, my 5 point plan to fix a problem that comes to me in a hypersecond. It's just a nanosecond. I've got 5 points and I'm telling you exactly what those 5 points need to be. Of course, what is my husband doing? Whoa, he's backing off. He's shutting down, right? He's hypo-reacting. So talking, fixing, telling other people what to do, taking the lead, becoming more emotionally intense, fighting, blaming, pushing to resolve and solve right now, or seeking closeness and reassurance. So these hypo-reactive and hyper-reactive are like a dance. The more somebody is overreacting, the more somebody is underreacting, because you're pushing them further away. Now, we have in, you can say sometimes this pattern is situational. Oftentimes it's between the relationship. One tends to overreact and one tends to underreact. It can be different in different relationships, but most likely in each of these marriages, they've got a pattern of what each of them do in their relationship, in their marriage. And so that's going to play out with this betrayal crisis.
Now, you talk about this, I mean, as being there's a normality to this in any relationship, in any marriage. How does this hyper and hypo reactivity tend to manifest in a couple that's recovering from betrayal trauma, like from a sexual betrayal? Because you talk about it going to like a 10. It's like different than kind of normal marriage stressors around fear and
Yeah, but it's going to happen. It's going to be compounded because in normal marriages, we've got triggers from our past, from our childhood that we're reacting to. For instance, a husband who was really criticized, intensely by his father and told he was, useless and couldn't do anything right. Every time the wife criticizes this husband or even brings up a problem or tells him something that she would like dealt with or looked at, he's going to have that trigger from the past and he's going to go up to, a 9, even though she said, honey, you forgot to take out the trash. Could you please take out the trash now before you leave to see your friends? And he's going to go, what? What? Quit telling me what to do. And she's going to go, whoa, where'd that come from? Well, that was his trigger, right? He's reacting to his past. So we've got that. And then we have the personalities and the patterns of them in their normal relationship and the past in their relationship. And oh my gosh, then take the betrayal. And they're both in a crisis. And the wife of it is in a crisis because she's been betrayed and she's might be in shock still. And or she might be in the stage of, we talked about the grief cycle one time. I talked about with you, how does the grief cycle play out in the wife's healing? And so she might be in shock. She might be in the anger stage where she's really angry and she's coming hard after her husband and telling him how angry she is. Well, what's happening with him? Well, the more angry she shows, the more, and we're going to talk about the specific things that they're reacting to, the more he's reacting because he's deluged with this anger and he's scared and he's having all of this rejection and all of these things. And yet at the same time, she wants to be heard. And when he backs off or he reacts angrily to her, because sometimes it can be hyper and hyper together, right? Then she's going to react more intensely. And then eventually, though, she might back off and withdraw because she might be like, well, he doesn't even care. And now he's telling me he hasn't done anything wrong. It's not that bad. And like, I've got to just back off and take care of myself here. And maybe I can't even make this marriage work. And so there's just, this can be this back and forth. It's like a dance, like distancing, coming closer, distancing, coming closer. And this is all like at a 10 in the relationship.
yeah, and it sounds like a lot of this is magnified through that betrayal to where there's almost like a desperation that can come out on both sides in this. And one of the things, this kind of what you're talking about there kind of dovetails into this next question I have for you is what effect does fear of a spouse's reaction have? Because, you've got a wounding partner and you've got a wounded partner. And you talked about how in a husband and a wife in this situation, there's fears on both sides. But how does that fear of how the other might react to anything that is said or done, what does that look like in this scenario?
Well, it's going to make both of them both of them are going to be, in a sense, walking on eggshells. And it might be in a relationship where maybe the husband never did walk on eggshells, but now he's going to be a little bit afraid. He's going to be a little bit more afraid of, well, what do I say to her? Is she going to react? How honest can I be with her about what I'm feeling, about what I'm struggling with? And maybe he's tried and she's been like and I don't mean sensitive in a like discounting way, but maybe she's anything he says is she just goes off on him again. She just, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe that it's been all this. And so all he did was ask something, kind of benign or just to try to connect. And then boom, he gets hit with it again. Or she does that to him, and then he goes really, or she comes to him and tries to tell him how she's feeling. I'm really hurt, and this is really hard, and it's really painful. And his reaction is to either completely withdraw, which reminds her of what it felt like during the betrayal time, where maybe he was disconnected, and then she's going to be fearful that anything she says to him is going to cause him to withdraw. And I could come up with 100 different scenarios in that. But that's an example of how both of them are heightened to each other's reactions because both of them are in the middle of this crisis. And it lasts for a long time because neither one really knows until they're through the healing process if the healing's going to work.
Yeah, and another fear that I think gets heightened in this is, and this is also something that I think is a thread through just any relationship, any marriage relationship, is the fear of rejection. Uh, what does that fear do in both spouses during this kind of repair journey
Mhm.
that they're trying to go through?
Well, the wife obviously is feeling really rejected because of the betrayal, whether it's been pornography or if it's been an affair or one night stands or whatever it is. She's feeling rejected as a woman. She's feeling rejected as a wife. She's feeling rejected as a person. She's feeling rejected as a sex partner. And so she's in the throes of rejection so much that she's even wondering, who am I? Am I adequate? I mean, she can have crises not only in her marriage but in her mothering and everything. It can literally destabilize her whole world depending on the severity. And so she's already feeling that rejection. And when her husband comes toward her, that rejection again shows up because she's like, it's a reminder of him coming toward her. Who were you with? What were you thinking about? Or you didn't come to me before, or what do you want? So rejection is triggered if he stays away, it's triggered if he comes close, and it's triggered just by nature of the betrayal. But he's feeling rejection too, because by her anger and by her withdrawing or her threats of divorce, or I don't know if this relationship is going to work, or I don't trust you, I don't know who you are, you're a stranger to me, I don't even believe in any of our life together. That is huge words of rejection where he's like, I know I made a mistake, but I am still your husband. I am still the man you married. And she's like, no, you're not. I don't even know who you are. So, and she can even like in the process of doing that, it can even be like, I don't trust anything you've done. And he's like, well, I've built this company. I've supported this family. I bought you this house. I've given you these children. Like I've been a good dad. And all of a sudden it's all ripped apart. So literally both of them are struggling with rejection. And I have to tell you, when you're struggling with rejection, your impulse is to try to figure out how to get acceptance from someone, right? So that could be by going more to your family. The woman might be talking more to her family and telling about what happened with the sexual betrayal. Now, I understand the need for that at times and with certain people, but you have to remember then that he's also feeling betrayal, or not betrayal, but rejection from maybe his in-laws now are calling him and telling him what a scoundrel he is. And maybe his brother-in-law is calling him, or his sister-in-law is giving him a nasty text. And maybe the kids know about it. And the kids are saying, how could you, Dad? They could be adults. They could be saying, how could you do this to mom? Like maybe he got caught at work with pornography and he lost his job. Now he's got rejection from his employer and his business associates and his financial income. So we can see where this is a huge, huge, like nest of bee's nest of potential triggers and places for arguments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we're kind of going through this list here, there's a lot of layers and angles to fear, right? I mean, it's not just I'm dealing with one type of fear. It's like I've got about 50 different variations of things that can trigger my fear. Another one that I think is probably really common in this that I want you to speak of, because this comes up all the time when there has been this kind of fissure in a marriage relationship, because that's the deepest like divide that can happen in a marriage is sexual betrayal. And so when that happens, one of the other fears that comes up on both sides is the fear of losses or potential losses, right? The loss of control, the loss financially, the loss relationally, the loss physically, whatever it may be. Can you talk about how that fear, even if it's only in their mind, like they haven't necessarily actually experienced these losses yet, but the fear of the potential of loss, what does that do in the relationship during this season?
Well, that's another thing that's really hard for us as human beings. We want stability. We want homeostasis, which is things to be the same and to be stable, even if it's not good stability. So, any fear of change or loss is scary to us. Let's say you get to move across country to a town you've always wanted to move to, but oh my gosh, two-edged sword, you got to leave everything that's familiar to you. Well, so all of these losses, threatened or real, like I said, it could be the loss of a job. That could be real. That could be financial. It could be threat of losing your home. If there's a threat of a threat of divorce, and most often that's something that is talked about when you find out about a betrayal, is that would could be the loss of everything. Could be the loss of home, could be the loss of children, it could be the loss of, it's the loss of the marriage. The woman, of course, is feeling the loss of the marriage as she knew it. There is a death of the marriage as you've known it, and that is something that has to be grieved, and it is something that has to be worked through to the other side in order to heal the marriage. The husband is going to have to grieve the loss of the marriage as he knew it, because there's going to have to be a new balance in the marriage, a new level of honesty, a new level of intimacy and closeness if the marriage is to thrive and heal in the right way. So, especially the wife is dealing with the loss of the things as she knew them. But anytime there's a threat of anything that has to do with finances, there might be maybe people telling him they're never going to talk to him again, that they're not going to view him again. That's a loss of a self image, or a loss of maybe his pride or his rapport with those people. So things are not the same. There are huge losses on both sides. Both of them are, again, you see, while we're dealing with the relationship, is what I wanted people to understand, is while you're dealing with the interaction with your spouse, as you're trying to come to the place of, we've got disclosure, we've got trying to figure out what happened, we've got, the having to figure out how to heal each of us individually as a couple. Also, the man is going to have to figure out, how am I going to stop the affair? Talking about affairs, you might have to lose your job. You might have to quit your job. One of the things that might be a requirement for your wife to stay with you is you got to quit your job, because your affair was on the job. And I can't stay with you if you continue working at your job. That's a huge loss. And that could involve finances, but it involves relationship. It involves maybe a prestigious position. Maybe you'll have to take something you're not so happy about. And so basically, while you're dealing with your interactions with your spouse, each person is dealing with all of these fears. We're not some people who deal with one tiny thing at a time. When we have these things in our brains and in our minds, or in our thoughts, as we are interacting with this spouse, you might be talking about what you're going to have for dinner, and you might be going through 10 of these fears in your emotions, even at your lower brain level, without even realizing they're there, and understanding that's what's driving your activity when your spouse says, "Would you like to go out for dinner?" And then you might be like, "Really? You want me to go out? Now you're asking me to go out? And you care about being with me now? Like, I don't think so." Whoa. I was just trying to be nice. I didn't want you to have to cook. And it's like, well, you know what? The time for niceness is over. And you're like, why did I just react to this person that way? It's because all of those stuff were going on inside your mind. Your mind works, in milliseconds, nanoseconds, and you don't even know why you're reacting like that. So these things have to be dealt with. These fears have to be like recognized.
Yeah. And we need to recognize too that we're even talking about just one emotion in the vast wheel of emotions that we
Yeah,
have. We're trying to focus in on fear. There's
yeah,
also anger and sadness and shame. And there's a lot of other emotions that are part of this journey. So please understand, listener and viewer, that we're also still trying, we're showing that there's a huge array within just this one emotion of trying to deal with it. Now, I'm sure at this point, Karla, we have completely overwhelmed our listeners because they're going, man, okay, my hair is blown back. I get it. In fact, this is what I'm experiencing.
yeah.
So, Karla, what do we do about these fears? I mean, and can you start maybe with the fact that both the husband and the wife are experiencing fear? That can be seen as a positive, something that they might even be able to form some sympathy for one another out of the fact that they both are afraid.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example that's a non-betrayal example, just to take it out of the kind of hyper focused of the people that are listening that are dealing with betrayal. And this was an example that was just told to me recently from a couple that used this idea and were became aware of it and changed the dynamic. So he has a business that he's just starting, and it's his business where he's going to be doing independent work. She is anxious about the fact that he's going into his own business, not sure of the finances. Frankly, it's a new marriage, not quite sure of how capable or how equipped he is, or how much he's worrying about all of the possible problems that could come up, because he's not communicating his fears to her. He's going gung ho, he's confident, he's like, I'm going to do it. And she's carrying all these fears of what if, what if, what if, what if. So she's hyper fearful about these what ifs because he's not talking about, well, I'm concerned about this, and I've got a plan just in case this happens. And so what happens is anytime she mentions anything about her fear, he like just she jumps on her because it's like she's hyper focused on him being, he's interpreting it as, you think I'm going to fail, you don't think I'm
Yeah.
capable
Like she
enough.
doesn't have confidence in him, like he
They're
can't do it or
confident
something like
in him.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. So recognizing, and then they fight, and then they leave mad, right? So recognizing this, he decided that he would bring down his reactivity as he was listening to her fears. He validated her fears. He said, yeah, I understand. I understand. He said, let me tell you some of my fears. Oh my gosh. She just melted and listened to him and said, you're afraid of that? You're afraid of that? Yeah, I'm afraid of that too. They had this closeness together that they haven't experienced in a long time. And both of them calmed down. She's more comfortable because she thinks he's keeping these things in mind. He's more comfortable because he admitted he was vulnerable and he admitted his fears and recognized, hey, I'm fearful too, which was hard to admit to her.
Mhm.
Simple.
Let me share a quick I'll share a quick example even from my own story with my wife and I as we were recovering after my infidelities and everything, is when we discovered that she had the fear that I would mess up again, and discovered that I had exactly the same fear. That started to become transformational in our relationship because it was like, oh my goodness, we have the same fear. Like before, it felt like we were on opposite ends of the planet in terms of you're way over there, you can't understand me, you're way over there, you can't get me. And then when we realized, man, one of our core fears right now is exactly the same, it actually brought us together to now we're like, we can be together against this thing that is trying to divide us. Like we have the same fear and we can now face it together. So, what then are some ways that couples can then begin to handle their anxiety and the fears in their marriage as they are seeking to repair after betrayal?
So when I talk about fears, when I use this as a principle, I call it facing your fears. And we've all heard people talk about, that when you need to face your fears. So you need to admit what your fears are and then you go do the right thing. Well, I break it down a little further. So it's like, first of all, you have to recognize that you're feeling afraid. It's like, okay, I think this is fear or anxiety. Anxiety is the distress because of fear. That's what the dictionary definition is of anxiety: distress or uneasiness because of fear. So I feel anxious. What's that from? I'm fearful of something. What's the fear? Okay, let yourself feel the fear. Identify what it is of. Am I fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of losing control? What is it? Right? Fear of your reaction if I come talk to you about this. What is it? Identify it, recognize how that fear is affecting you. How is that holding me back? How is that affecting how I'm interacting with my spouse? How is that affecting, maybe I'm afraid to take a chance and allow my husband to try to work a program to keep our marriage together. I'm so scared it's going to happen again that I just want to give up. But what's that doing? That means that I will give up on my marriage. Is that okay? Am I good with that? So, how is it keeping you stuck? How is it affecting you? And then you need to say, what would I be doing if I wasn't afraid? How would I be handling this if I wasn't afraid? And then you turn it over to God, you trust God with it. You talk to somebody else about it. Could be your therapist, could be your friend, maybe it's your spouse. Maybe you get to the point where you can talk to your spouse about it. And then you do the right thing anyway. So maybe you're afraid of your spouse's reaction, but you know it's something that you need to go do because it's the right thing. You work through those things and you go and you have that conversation. But once you've worked through those things, plus your reactivity style, is it hyper-reactive? Is it hypo-reactive? Is it, which one is it? Are you, then you don't do that. You do the opposite. You literally say, nope, I'm not gonna run. I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna listen. And then there are things you can do to calm your autonomic nervous system, very simple, deep breathing exercises. Take a break when you feel like you're getting too intense. Go take a walk, praying, putting on music, holding your spouse's hands when you're talking very hard you got to pull them away before you get mad because we're not going to be screaming while we're holding somebody's hands. Normally we have to break that connection. So there are things to do. Sometimes people will go sit in restaurants if they have a hyper reactive response because they know they're not going to start screaming at a restaurant, hopefully. So
Hopefully, yeah.
that's a lot. Those are a lot of
Yeah.
steps. This is the
Now, I
reason
would
why.
say
Oh,
too,
go ahead.
yeah, one of the things I wanted to say too that can be helpful, and we see this maybe more so in the men than in the women, but it's helpful for both, is if they've never even explored their own feelings, a
Mm,
feelings wheel can be very helpful. So
mhm.
that because if all you've known is like we do this with men a lot because sometimes men only know happy, sad, mad. That's like the only feelings they know, but that's very high level. That's not getting down to like the nuance of like I've got a feelings wheel pulled up here and it starts with fearful, like afraid. But then it might be, are you feeling rejected or insecure or threatened? And then if you go to threatened, it's like, well, are you nervous or feeling exposed? So the idea is to be more maybe clear on, okay, yeah, I know there's a fear, that kind of lower brain, boom, I just got afraid. But what you're saying is maybe also bring your upper brain into it to start to explore it a little bit more so you have more clarity of what am I actually dealing with here versus just being reactive in your old patterns of either pulling away or jumping forward in hyper
Yeah.
reactivity, right?
And you want to recognize what are bodily sensations that happen when your lower brain, this is the it's really your amygdala, is when it is affected. The brainstem sends some type of signal from a sound or a reaction or a word or a picture up there, and it comes in. And what are the bodily sensations? And there are a lot of bodily sensations that come with your fight flight system. It could be a feeling of shock, it could be a tightened stomach, it could be a rise in your blood pressure, it could be clenched fists, It could be your clenched jaw. You could have this like tightening of your whole body. It could be a surge of energy. If you really want to get a hold of this cycle in yourself first, and your spouse can do the same thing. You got to recognize the bodily sensations that tell you that you're activated, so that you can recognize it in that really quick nanosecond of time to go. And then if you can't do it right then, as soon as you recognize, oh, I'm in that fight flight, you got to go time out. I got to go process this, or I just need some time to think, or you got to bring yourself through it. So there's kind of like work at two levels. There's the work of figuring out what fears you really are struggling with during this betrayal, what is going on, and then there's the work of recognizing what's going on in the moment. And so that in itself is a lot of therapy if you're like knowing nothing that's going on with you.
Yeah, and that's really helpful. Let's as we have a few minutes left here, one of the things I want you to try to address is to cast a vision for what is sort of the goal that a couple is aiming for in their desire to get better at responding to their fears. Like, what are they aiming for? What is the hope? What is the hopeful outcome
Yeah.
of navigating these fears together?
Yeah. The hopeful outcome is to not allow the fears to hijack their healing. Because if you're not aware of all of this and you're not paying attention to it, your fears can actually hijack you and hijack the relationship. It can become unworkable because you're both just reacting to each other. And then it's just forget it. This isn't going to work. And the husband can be overwhelmed and think, I can't do this. Like I can't get better in this environment because it's triggering, all of his emotional stuff and his past, like trauma and stuff. And she might feel I'll never heal. I can never trust him, because trust is broken down too when he's reacting in his old ways. When he withdraws, and that was a sign of him pulling away into his sexual addiction or being gone and with his, affair partner, oh, she's going to feel like you're doing it again. You're doing it again. And then all her fears are going to go sky high. So the idea is to get it under control so it's not hijacking your relationship.
That's good. It makes me think, coming back to that Psalm 56 passage that you shared about,
Great.
when I am afraid, I will trust you. What a great sort of mantra that a couple could have of saying, when I'm afraid, when my spouse is triggering my fear, or vice versa, let me take a pause, and maybe we can both take a pause and go, let's trust him. Like, we need him right now because we can't do this on our own. And that's powerful, because sometimes we're looking so much to our spouse to be the one that we want to trust in, that we're
Yeah.
like, well, we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure in that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can say, but the real rock, the real steady anchor for my soul is my relationship with God, because he's 100% always trustworthy.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes, especially the season I'm in right now with my spouse, the trust isn't flowing right now.
Hmm.
So just having that anchor can help with the fears, because, and then also circling all the way back to what you said at the very beginning about the fact that fear is a normal, natural emotion, and we don't need to, if I can put it this way, be afraid of it. Like, it's okay. It's
Exactly.
okay to feel that. But like you said, let's not let it hijack our journey of healing and repair in our relationship.
Yeah.
Are there any, as we wrap up here, Karla, again, this has been a great conversation. Where can our listeners and viewers go to maybe get some resources from you, or learn from you along these lines, especially about lots of other things about healing relationships? Where can people go to
Yeah.
learn more?
So my website is changemyrelationship.com, and on that I have my books, I have my YouTube channel, my podcast channel. I have a free devotional subscription that you can sign up for, which would also give you notices of when I put something else out on YouTube. I also have classes that both men and women take. I have one on self-image, repairing your self-image, which men need that too, and they love it. I have one on for women in difficult marriages and transforming difficult relationships, which is for all difficult relationships. I teach 10 principles of how to navigate dysfunctional relationships, how to get healthy when you're dealing with unhealthy people, one of my 10 principles is facing your fears. And it's absolutely required before you set boundaries. It's required before you can speak your truth in love. And it's just they're super helpful. I have had a lot of wives take them that are dealing with husbands who have had betrayed them, and they found them very, very helpful. And so I also, you can write me and ask me questions about your particular situation, even in regards to this conversation. They can be this long. I read them and I respond in detail. So if
That's
you have
good.
any questions about this podcast, I'm here. Please write to me through my website, and I'll be happy to answer you.
Well, Karla, as always, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you again for having me, Jonathan. God bless your ministry. It's very, very, very important. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. Well, listeners and viewers, we're going to put all that information that Karla just shared in the show notes so that you can go get information about her 10 principles and different things that are going to help you if you're in navigating a difficult relationship. We're here to help you take your next best step to wholeness in Christ. So please reach out to us, and we look forward to seeing you back here again next time on the Pure Sex Radio program. Take care.